Alrighty. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum. Alrighty. This Taaleem is brought to you by Mecca, men elevating, cultivating community life. And so basically, we wanted to honor, I'm sorry, sir, what'd you say? Men elevating for community life. Advancement for community life. I do apologize. As you can see, I'm kind of nervous up here.
All right.
I'm very nervous. I'm ready to have a trip here, but nonetheless, seriously, we wanted to recognize Brother El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, aka Malcolm X, because we're about 2 days from his birthday. As a member of our community, we wanted to again. He came through as some people call it, the first experience, and we wanted to honor him as a member of the community, and also try to show example of, or at least to talk about the example of him and how it relates to Mecca. I'm joined up here by my partner, Brother Zarif. He will engage you in terms of the history. We have some other people in the audience who are knowledgeable too of the history and his time in the nation, and as he grew up before he was assassinated. So we wanted to start, first of all, start with prayer, if we can. Brother George, if you could.
So we'll open up with Al-Fatiha, the opening. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim. غير مغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. So this is our traditional opening, and today, inshallah, we do want to discuss the life, history, accomplishments, and successes of El Hajj Malik Shabazz. As many may know, and many have researched to learn, that Malcolm X, as he's commonly known, was a second-generation humanitarian coming from a family. His father and mother both were Garveyites. They worked with Marcus Garvey directly. Malcolm was born in Omaha, Nebraska, out in the Midwest. And, of course, what we tragically learn is that his father was killed because of his work with Marcus Garvey. And of course, as you might know, Garveyites were required the men to wear their uniforms when they were not at work at a job that they had. And that uniform was very distinct. They had a brown leather belt that went crossways of their body and a brown leather belt that went around their waist over their official uniform. If you saw them, you would simply see them and think of them pretty much as state policemen. That's how official their uniforms were. And of course, their wives and the women wore all white. Head coverings, all of their upper and lower bodies were covered down to their ankles with white. They traditionally had amassed a huge following from 1910, 1913, when they really became nationally known. They would have conventions in New York City. They would parade and have tens of thousands of Garveyites show up in uniform, 12 abreast across the street marching, symbolizing their freedom as Garveyites. And of course, as you know, Garvey was also a person that had attracted Farad Muhammad. And Farad was working with Garvey as well as Noble Drew Ali, They were patterning themselves after a similar need that really still exists today. That was, how can the African American community have an opportunity to grow their own food, have their own communities, and then, of course, Garvey's final emphasis was to transport our people back to Africa. But beside that, the father of Malcolm was one of the strong supporters. So he was run over by a car by white supremacists. And the government of the time in Omaha declared it an accident. They said it was an accident. But of course, we know better. His wife, which was Malcolm's mother, actually began to mourn that, so to the extent that she had a nervous breakdown. And she was committed into an insane asylum. So this is the backdrop. Malcolm, at 8 years old, had said to his then teacher in elementary school that he wanted to become a lawyer. And the teacher at that time, who was white, told him that that was nonsense, that there's no way a Negro is going to become a lawyer. And so that level of discouragement immediately affected him. And as you might know, he went on to become, once the family moved over into Detroit, he became a criminal, a street criminal. But here's the important thing. He's born in 1925. So picture the surroundings of 1925 America in the Midwest, which is Omaha, Nebraska. So there's not a population density of Omaha today is not more than 6% African American today. So it was probably less than 3% at that time. And all African Americans were considered to be servant labor people. They were not granted the opportunity to be considered professional people. So Malcolm grew with a desire, as you can learn at 8 years old. If you decide you want to be a lawyer, there were some things about that made him want to feel that way. And so we later learned that after he comes into being in the street life as a hustler, and during that time, you know, we had the dress of the street hustler, usually running numbers, as it was called. And, you know, many consider that African-American community running numbers was the stock market for black people, because we were not engaged in the stock market in traditional sense. We weren't allowed to. But we were using a form called running numbers, which looked at the numbers in the stock market, and people could bet on those numbers. And numbers runners were average men and women who would transport and go sell you a number. You could pick a number, they would sell it, collect the money from you, and this was an economy that was carried on in the African American community. So at that point, when Malcolm does end up getting a conviction for being a hustler on the street, and if you've seen the movie, you kind of get an image of how that all looked and how it worked. But in the prison is when Malcolm was exposed to Nation of Islam teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And this time he goes into prison in 1949. And in 49, as he goes in, he stays in until 1952. For those years that he is incarcerated, he starts studying and reading the dictionary. And he begins to be proficient in reading every page of every alphabet in the dictionary to educate and re-educate himself through the dictionary study. And then the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad opened him up to things such as actual facts that are still utilized in the nation up through the current date, which really gave him an outlook on the world globally. That really gave him the exposure to see and learn that he wanted to be a part of the nation. That meant he has his hair, his uniform, how he dressed, how he spoke, the belief in protecting our women, protecting our children, doing for self as is known, and creating, becoming a voice for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So he is credited with starting the first Muslim journal, which at that time was called the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. And before he was able to institute that, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was writing articles in the Pittsburgh Courier every week. And the men would sell the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper for that centerpiece article that Elijah Muhammad would be writing, speaking those same truths. And it was Malcolm's idea that we start our own newspaper. And of course, as you know, once that was accepted, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, let's do that. They formed what then was known as the Muslim Journal, which got up to, as we believe, a major circulation of over 52,000 papers in one city at a time. So this is Malcolm's journey. And then, of course, once he is in the position as considered the national spokesman for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, meaning he is the only person that could go on camera, can go on talk shows such as they were then, only Meet the Press and shows of that nature, or speak to the press, newspapers, of course, and frequently during the early 60s you would see him on television. News people would want to interview him and ask him about language or ask him about situations that had occurred around the country. So it was no question that Malcolm eventually had a case of disagreement when the assassination of President Kennedy took place, and that was 1963. And in that moment, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad silenced all of his ministers to not speak about that travesty, because he realized that by so doing, it would infuriate and show a form of disrespect at a time when America had lost its president through assassination. And Malcolm had a point, of course, at that point, he made a statement that said, when Kennedy was assassinated, this is an opportunity for recognized chickens coming home to roost.
Why was Kennedy revered in our community?
Well, Kennedy was revered in our community largely because Kennedy represented a form of justice being served by the federal government for the very first time towards African Americans. And at that time, we were considered or called Negroes. But Kennedy's brother, who was Robert Kennedy, was the Attorney General. And this was the first time that the federal government's efforts as the Attorney General in the Justice Department protected African Americans in the South. As you might know, the little Ruby Brown incident in the South, Mississippi, in Arkansas, when federal marshals were sent to protect these young children to go to school. They escorted them to school and escorted them home. But many of the schools refused to let the teachers teach or have the school children show up. So many of these children were the only student in that school during that time. But the fact was that President Kennedy became the person who was bringing justice for the first time in a public way to protect African Americans and the rights of African Americans, for education, for public accommodations, and so on. Yet the Ku Klux Klan and other racist organizations were still operating to impede black people's access and progress to not only public accommodations where you sat on the bus, where you had restrooms, where you had water fountains, all segregated and not allowing us to have access. And of course, because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm both were saying the solution to that problem is separation. The solution to the problem is not integration. Is that if we have our own, and matter of fact, 3 states were requested by Elijah Muhammad. We want 3 states that we can occupy because you don't love us, you don't want us, you don't want us to work with you. So in the Muhammad Speaks paper, you would see every week a syllabus in there that said, these are the things that the Muslims want. We want separation. We want to be in our own 3 states. We want to have our own farms, our own educational system. And he instituted, at that time, the University of Islam, which was teaching children from age 3 all the way up to age 16 or 17, and creating a whole system of education, a system of economy, a system of business and industry, and it really was profound. It was following the script that Marcus Garvey had laid out in prior years. So Malcolm became a great focal point for that. So we do know that from 1925 until 1965, when Malcolm was assassinated, then it was done as he had left the Nation of Islam by that time. 63, he parted ways because he made the statement about Kennedy. He was excommunicated by Elijah Muhammad. By the time 1964 rolls around, Malcolm had already formed an organization called the Organization of African American Unity. That organization became the organization he was trying to use to appeal to the UN to allow African Americans to be represented at the UN by this organization, and that all African American organizations should participate, be a part, be a member, and plead for human rights through the United Nations, rather than trying to seek civil rights from a government that already had been persecuting you for 300 plus years. And of course, by him forming that organization and being excommunicated, it was formed to form his own religious organization. It was called the Muslim Masjid Incorporated, or Muslim Mosque Incorporated at that time, the MMO. And that organization he used to preach and teach Islam because of his journey to Egypt and to Mecca. He made the Hajj to Mecca to acquaint himself with Islam in the sense of what was known as Sunni Islam. At the first time in his life, he saw Muslims who, by his definition, were Caucasian, and these were mainly Muslims that were from other parts of the world that had the complexion of Caucasians, but yet they were Muslim. This made him have a whole unique idea that Islam was not a black people's organization, that it included people of all nationalities. So coming back and having those thoughts, ideas, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, at that time headed by a gentleman that we well know, Mr. Hoover. Mr. Hoover was given the express purpose of following all black leaders. And importance, he was hired by the FBI to track Mr. Marcus Garvey. That was his first assignment, to follow Marcus Garvey, to find a way to get Marcus Garvey from teaching, whom, remember, he was teaching not only Fard Muhammad, he was teaching others the same idea of self-direction, self-support. So at that point, Malcolm was assassinated because of a plot established by the FBI in conjunction with the CIA, in conjunction with the New York City police. They fashioned a opportunity to assassinate him. And of course, he had the history of speaking at the Audubon Ballroom, which is where he was conducting his public addresses, his public speeches. The night before that fatal event took place, Malcolm was on the phone with a great friend of his who was Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory was asked to accompany him at the ballroom the following day. Gregory was in Houston at a presentation himself, and he told Malcolm, I can't join you there this time, but let me know when you will be meeting the next time. He said, but be very careful, Malcolm, be very careful. And Malcolm said to him, well, we have that covered. What Malcolm did not know is that the FBI had already put informants around him, and the informants were given instruction to go after two of Malcolm's key security personnel. And those two brothers who were his security personnel were approached by one of the informants with a drug deal that would offer them to make a significant amount of money. And both of them said, no, we don't want to participate. But the plan was to get them committed to have a conversation about that, and then what ensued was they both were arrested and charged by the FBI with trafficking drugs, although it was a trumped-up charge. But the purpose of that was to get Malcolm separated from his security forces. Those two men were incarcerated, so the next day Malcolm did not have his standard security professionals with him. So those men normally would have gone into the ballroom and secured the ballroom prior to his coming there. What we later learned is that they had also been committed to speaking to three members of the Nation of Islam and asking them to cooperate for money for setup of the assassination. Only one of those three men really was given the right to be the assassin. What those three men did not know is that the FBI and the CIA had planted sharpshooters in the balcony of the ballroom. And what later was determined 30 plus years later is that the shots did not come from the floor from the three men that were given, suspected, and accused of the crime. The shots came from above, and by examination of the body, we knew that the shots came in a trajectory downward, not upward, because Malcolm was standing on a stage. The three men were standing below him in the ballroom, so the shots would have had to come up in looking at the autopsy. But later we realized, 30 plus years later, when the lawsuit is initiated, that there were 9 former New York City policemen who were in that ballroom, who were set up as the sharpshooters, who were actually who committed the murders. 2 of the 3 Muslim men from the Nation of Islam, 2 of them were acquitted, and they were paid handsomely because of the work that took place with going after re-prosecuting the case. And of course, today in 2024, Malcolm's family is now charging, and that lawsuit is online if you'd like to go look at it. It's about an 85-page indictment letter accusing those 9 police officers, the FBI, the CIA, the New York City Police Department, planning the murder, setting up the murder, paying the gentleman to participate in the murder, and that right now that lawsuit is $100 million. It is still ongoing and in process. This is really a synopsis of the history and trajectory that Malcolm actually went through. He's affected the lives of so many of all of us in the African American community and around the world. When we travel in our African countries, in countries around the world, young people know about the story of Malcolm X. They may not know the details, but they know the history of his character, the history of his language, the history of his speaking. For me, at age 18, I read the book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, and that really changed and transformed me into being not an SCLC student of Dr. King, but then becoming a mind student of the Nation of Islam. And those who were saying we don't have to lay down and allow fire hoses to be shot on us and dogs to come after us. We have a right to self-defense, self-determination, and to speak truth to power. So those are really some of the ingredients. Most of the people will tell you, and I did a reading about Spike Lee saying that was the first book as a teenager that changed his life, that made him really see, think, know, understand, and believe that we don't have to be the Negroes that the world has told us that we are. We don't have to show our history from slavery. We have a history that exceeds that, goes 25,000 years beyond that. These are the things that really have helped invigorate us. So hope that helps give us some clarity on the background. I'm going to turn the microphone back over.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brother Zarif. Also, we wanted to share something first person. This brother here has come to this masjid before, and he has shared his thoughts and his perspective with the greater community. His name is Khaled Yassin, and we'd like to show part of his thoughts with Brother Malcolm. If we can, share that real quickly. Just be real short here. Is it on? Just give me 1 second. Let me see if it's on. Is it on? Is it? Okay, let me double check. Just double check the pause here real quick, because that's. Speakers are up. Because it's connected to the projector, you think?
Projector don't get sound.
Don't just get sound?
Speakers are
Oh, yeah, speakers up.
Slide that over. Click on that. Switch it to speaker.
Who is Khalid Yasin, and can you tell us briefly about your life?
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. I was born in New York, 1946, Christian parents, and I grew up in sort of as an orphan. Although I had parents, I accepted Islam in 1965 from a very dignified personality by the name of Sheikh Dawood Ahmed Faisal. 1965 was the same year that Malcolm X was assassinated. So he was assassinated in February, and I became Muslim in October.
How was your life in regards to faith? What were you believing in?
Well, the Christian, the foster homes that I were in, each one of them were a different persuasion of Christianity. We can say it was like a buffet. So Methodist, Episcopalian, Baptist. So I had the whole spectrum by the time that I was 16 years old. And then I went into the military service, and I was in the Air Force for 2.5 years. So when I was in the military service, the Catholic religion was the most dominant. And so I had an occasion to go and talk to a priest, because I thought that, the priest is a person that he can mentor you or whatever. And then I saw some inconsistencies in that. So I tried my hand at Catholicism, but it was just too rigid, too much mystique, too European, too clinical. And then there were some tremendous contradictions inside the Catholic Church that manifested itself later on.
Can you tell us about some of those contradictions?
So while I was in the Air Force, I was still trying to practice Christianity, traditionally in some forms. It wasn't making sense to me when I was 7, but you digest it because it's given to you. But there were issues that were not making sense.
Like?
Well, Jesus being God and his own son, that didn't make sense to me. And then he's also somehow the personality of the Holy Ghost. So, the Trinity, this whole 3-in-1 concept in a person, 3 separate persons, but one God. It just didn't make sense to me.
So how did your journey to Islam start?
At 17 years old, I remember riding on a train. I saw this letter. It was the New York Times. And New York Times did a complete full-page advertisement, or they printed the letter of Malcolm from Mecca. So I remember reading that letter, and in that letter, Malcolm, Ghafirullahu lah, he mentioned words like Mecca, the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He mentioned the Kaaba, he mentioned the Quran. So just 5 or 6 or 7 things that he said in that letter, Hajj, Arafat, and I never heard those words before. So at that time, we didn't have social media. If you were fortunate as a young person, and I was one of those fortunate young people, I had a set of what was called at that time the Encyclopedia Britannica. So I went to the encyclopedia and I looked up these words. That was it. I never saw those words before. When I understood those words, I understood why Malcolm was moved. I understood why he could not put his car into reverse.
So you were very inspired by him. Did you meet Malcolm X?
So I started looking into this nation of Islam that he evolved out of. I started looking at his words in his trip to Mecca. And just before he was assassinated, I had the chance to attend one of his talks in Harlem, and it was a very cold morning. I think he spoke from the Hotel Teresa, which is no longer there, and I was one of the people that was there. Thousands of people were in the street to listen to Malcolm, to see him. We saw him. We were on the roof, myself and two or three others, and his security saw us on the roof and told us to come down. We came downstairs, and of course we were very cold, and he called us over and we shook his hand. And when I look back now, that was very memorable. It's just something that happened at that time. Malcolm he was electric. You know, he was a personality that African Americans had never seen. But Malcolm took his Shahada. He was assassinated in February 1965. I was 17 or 18, and so he was assassinated in February, and I became Muslim in October.
So how did you take your Shahada?
There was a friend of mine named Zakaria Rashid. May Allah have mercy on him. And so I went and met his father, and his father's name was Elwan Rashid. May Allah have mercy upon him, a very, very unusual, intellectual, powerful thinking person. And he sent me to Sheikh Dawood Ahmed Faisal from the Islamic Mission of America. And on October the 5th, 1965, at the Islamic Mission of America, I became Muslim. So I never went through the Nation of Islam. I took my Shahada directly. And then, so my Islamic, we can say my Islamic evolution, it started in October.
How did your family and the people around you react to your conversion to Islam?
It started with my father. I didn't meet my father until I was 22. When I did meet him, I think he passed away when I was 27. So I didn't know him until he died, and then I buried him. I was fortunate enough to have a good relationship with him before he died, and he asked me to wash him and bury him the way that we wash and bury the Muslims. He asked me to wash him because I was an imam at the time, and my sister told him that I was responsible, that when people passed away in my community, I was the person that did the washing and the burial. I wish that he would have accepted Islam, but maybe in his own way he did, because we had several conversations. And secondly, my mother never resisted Islam. She told me, son, if you believe that this way of life is going to make you a better person, just go. But don't be a blind follower. That's what she told me. And my mother was...
I wanted to stop it there. And basically, we have people in our community, and this brother here comes here, I think, for Juma every so often, in our midst, who are historical books. So just wanted to keep that in mind. This brother here, because I met him maybe 2-3 weeks ago. He had come to the masjid, and beautiful brother. Back here. And we have some first-hand experience with some brothers here also too, other than Brother Khalid Yassin, who either were directly or indirectly in touch with, who were influenced by Al-Hajj Miguel al-Shabazz. His influence, as always, is just like Brother Spike Lee, Brother Zarif. After reading his autobiography, it lit a spark. I can honestly say for myself, if I hadn't read this book, when I was 17, I might not even known about y'all Muslims. that unknown to me in 88, 87. And then it started changing, especially with the culture and the music at the time. And then after reading that, yeah, it was on. It was on and that, popping after that, as they say. We have other organizations did spring from Malcolm's life. Part of that being the Black Panther Party. what a lot of people don't know is his inspiration to Dr. Huey and also Bobby Seale. They took that example of Malcolm and instituted what we know as the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. Other people who followed in the Panther Party, also formed other organizations. I have a mentor who passed away just recently. He followed the example of Malcolm, and he was a former Panther, and formed multiple organizations. Some that are still right now happening in terms of being an independent Black political party. May Allah have mercy on his soul, because if it wasn't, again, for his example, a lot of things I would not have gone through myself. But as this group here with Mecca, Men Elevating, Cultivating Community Advancement, is an example of what Malcolm instituted within the nation, and also in his other organizations too. And that is why we do what we do in terms of following the example, also with the guidance of W.D. Muhammad. And what Mecca is about making community better, community life better. And that is what we have currently going on with Mecca. Some of the things that I would like to talk about is the formation of Mecca and how that started out. Brother Maurice, do you remember when Brother Imam Khalil had talked about forming this organization?
Yes. Brother Lawrence came up with the acronym, and he went home, he prayed on it, he thought about it, and he came with the acronym, Men Elevating, Cultivating Community Advancement. And so, as you and George so beautifully put, we have the examples, but we never want to leave out the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because he played a role. And you hear a lot about Malcolm, but they leave out the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And because he came into the community and he got people off of drugs, he straightened people up, as George said, stopped people from running numbers, and gave us dignity. So as men of Mecca, we want to instill the same values in our young people, because our young people out here, they lost. They don't even know their history. And if you try to teach them, they walk around sagging and smoking and acting violent. And so we have to be consistent in helping and organizing our youth. So Mecca is dedicated to also helping our young people. If you look at what we did with our gala, we hired the young folks. They did a magnificent job of helping to park the cars and escorting people into the event. We helped them, trying to teach them security. Brother Tiff, Brother Shelton is consistent in showing them how to use self-defense and how to use their brain and not have to use a gun, how to look at the importance of school. Even at the summer camp and even our Strong in School, we try to use that to show the kids, listen, if you get an education and you do what you're supposed to do, then Allah will bless you, to get them away from that instant gratification. And, George has been a good example of, because he has a way of explaining the history from his memory. I mean, I wish I could just go through it the way he goes through it. So when he speaks to the young people, he speaks with passion. When our Tiff, Shelton, Labib, Reggie, when we see our young brothers come in, the brothers on security, they see how Brother Sharif is doing a beautiful job, taking care of the lawn, how Brother Wahab, Brother Lawrence, and all the brothers here, Brother Chaka, we're encouraging these brothers. We get on the basketball court with them. This is what Mecca does. We try to be an example for our youth because they need examples. And so, and then they see how we respect one another. We don't always agree, but we love each other and we respect each other. So, this is what Mecca has to be a consistent example of. They see a young imam here. You see, one day Imam Ibn was assistant imam then the community elected him to be the imam. So he had already established a rapport with the young people, so they can see the elevation and the growth in the men here at Masjid Ash-Shaheed, and we have to consistently do that. And so with that, I say assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. And the thing about it is our fellowship, our fellowship amongst men. I know sometimes it can be challenging amongst each other, but nonetheless, the fellowship that we do have, within ourselves. So Mecca has that and has built that, and that is that what is the thing that Malcolm did. He one of the instances is that other than forming the masjid, he was one of the ones who was part of the establishing with the fruit, and we have we have that here with Mecca. We have that here. It can be better, some points, but for the most part, we have that here. We have that here. Brother Sheldon, if you could tell us about what you know from the imam's point of view about his relationship with Malcolm. He was Wallace at the time, right?
Yes.
He was Brother Wallace.
Minister Wallace.
Minister Wallace, excuse me, Minister Wallace. And what was from what you know, Mr. Wallace and Malcolm were one of the two people that people look to in terms of, and other than Elijah Muhammad, in terms of the guidance of going into Islam.
Assalamu alaikum. Shelton Hassan is my name. I read this book when I was in the 7th grade. I was 12 years old. I was struck by this life story of this man. I was attracted to him because his name was Malcolm Little. My mother's name was Ruby Little. So I felt we had to be related. I adopted him. He my cousin. So from the 7th grade through high school, this was my cousin. I saw him. I read everything I could find with his name on it, but I didn't see his teacher. I didn't understand that. I was too immature to understand the importance of the teacher that introduced him to that new life. In this book, who has not read this? Raise your hand. Don't be ashamed. This ain't nothing but a book, and it's his story. So if you haven't read it, the autobiography of Malcolm is worth reading. Now, they spoke about people that has been influenced. Chadwick Boseman said the same thing. He read it when he was 14. It influenced his life. So Spike Lee talked about his life. I think Denzel, but he didn't speak it. Denzel wanted to be him. He asked, I'm going to be him. I'm going to play him. Spike Lee made it happen, okay? So it did a lot for me. So I was introduced to Islam proper in July 75 in the Nation of Islam. I didn't join. I was 18 years old. I had to go talk to my daddy first. I said, I can't join without getting my father's permission. So by the time I got to my father, I had went in the army, came back. That's when I talked to my daddy, because I came up Christian. So we raised on a hog farm in North Carolina. My daddy was a chef. He could cook. So y'all know the story. So when I come home to tell him, I don't eat that no more. He said, what? I don't eat that hog no more. So, but getting back to Malcolm, in his book, the autobiography, he talked about when Malcolm came home from prison in 52, and he landed in Detroit with his oldest brother, Wilford. All Malcolm's family were Muslims in the nation. They wrote to him consistently trying to get him to come. He was a stubborn person. He'll tell you about that. He was called Satan in prison. So when he got released to his brother's care, living in his brother's house, his brother got him a job. And Wilford was the treasurer of Temple No. 1 in Detroit for 5 years. Then he became the minister for 12 years. He had the longest administration in that history of No. 1, 17 years. He kind of pulled away after Malcolm's assassination out of fear, he said. He didn't know if they was going to kill him too. In fact, they didn't go to the funeral because they were afraid. They saw the funeral on TV in a hotel. So Wilford was the treasurer for 5 years, the minister for 12 years. And Malcolm was greatly influenced by his brothers and sisters, but he did more because he was studious, more studious than them. In prison, professors from Harvard University came in, and Malcolm made it a fun experience to go debate with them. These were professors from Harvard, and he would choose to go in there and throw questions at them that he figured they ain't gonna be able to answer this. You know, and they come in there with the brilliant. Some of them had 2 PhDs, and he would go in there and test their mindset. He already read the encyclopedia, the dictionary, so his articulation was amazing that he challenged them. So that's what made him a prolific speaker, because he practiced. A lot of people didn't know that story. So when he got to Detroit, he was shocked that the number 1 was almost empty. Wasn't enough people in there. He said he can't believe all these empty seats in here with this man, with the message. I'm going to change this. He personally went to the street and started what we call in the nation what? Fishing. He started fishing. He went out to fish new people, and he brought them in. So that was a tradition that was practiced in Detroit, number 1, Harlem, number 7, Philadelphia, number 12, and it built the nation, okay? That built the membership. Anytime you went to hear Malcolm, he would tell you, you cannot come here and leave without being changed by this message. Anybody like us that experienced that, I'm going to tell you what got me, FOI. I was sitting on the front row, and the FOI changed the guards in front of me, the front guards. I had never seen that before. 18 years old, growing up in the church. I ain't never seen no black soldier like that in my life. And I said right then, I'm going to be one of them. I couldn't do it, though. I had to go through the process. So I went on a Friday night. I went back Sunday, Wednesday, Friday for a whole month. Did not miss a meeting, but I wouldn't join, sitting on the front row. So after I went through that ritual, I went to the Army, and I joined the Nation of Islam in '77 while I was in the Army. So Malcolm tells you in that book his relationship, when he came out and he had questions about the teachings of Islam, he'd go to his teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad referred him to Minister Wallace. Go to Minister Wallace and he will help you. So in the Nation of Islam, all the ministers were taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to study the Bible. There was only 2 that were not. Minister Wallace, Minister Malcolm. Malcolm was taught by Minister Wallace in the Quran. So they grew in the Quran. When they delivered their teachings, they came from the Quran, not the Bible. Minister Wallace did, and Minister Malcolm. Minister Wallace built number 12, the top of the clock, from Quranic teachings. He taught them how to make their prayer correctly. That wasn't the first place. He did a national tour in 1959, teaching all the Muslims how to do prayer proper. So, but in Philadelphia, he really did that, okay? So they flourished, they grew. Minister Malcolm created the Muhammad Speaks newspaper in 60, I think it was 60. This is what happened. Minister Malcolm's mother wrote for the Negro Digest, the newspaper that Marcus Garvey created. Is it Negro Digest? Who knows that? Negro Digest, is that the real name? Halal? That's the real name? Okay, Negro Digest. He was a writer for that. So Malcolm was influenced by his mother. So when he saw the need for us to have a paper, he was visiting Los Angeles, building number 26. When he was sent out there to start the Temples 26, he went to visit the black newspaper, Los Angeles Sentinel, I believe. They gave him a tour. He stayed a week. They trained him on the process of printing and doing a paper. He came back home, got in his basement, and started working on making a paper, creating a paper. As he stated earlier, the paper that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad articles was in, it was the Pittsburgh Courier and another one. Amsterdam News. Those 2 papers printed Elijah Muhammad articles, so the FOI delivered the paper, sold the paper in the street, and they got top sales because of that. So Malcolm pitched his product to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the other administrators of the nation, and they accepted it. And that paper became the top black paper in America, okay? UNIA's paper was the top black paper internationally, but the nation's paper did United States. It didn't go as big as the UNIA, but it became the top selling paper in the United States in 1974. Top sales in the United States. Muhammad Speaks. But y'all know what happened. The separation took place when Malcolm got suspended. And the administration came after him. They wouldn't even write about him in that paper at that time. But he tells you how he did it, and because I had a debate with a guy in Detroit recently about how the paper started, and I told him, go to this page. Malcolm tells you himself how he did that paper. So nobody in Elijah Muhammad's did that. Malcolm did that. So that's his story. It's important. That's why it's important for us to read his story. He tells you himself, word for word, what happened, how it happened, except for the separation. That's something that's different. And he named the culprits behind misinformation about Malcolm, his life, and all of that. Same thing happened with Marcus Garvey. So as us, being non-readers, we accept what's put in front of us by somebody else, more so than reading for yourself and getting your understanding, accepting their story. That's an autobiography. Autobiography is a story that somebody wrote about their lives. He tells you that. There's a documentary that Alice Hazley done, very nice. YouTube it up, look at it. He tells you about the writing of that story and how personal he got with Malcolm. And that was a real experience for him that him and Malcolm established just by interviewing Malcolm on a regular basis and putting all this together. There's 5 chapters that was left out of that book right there. I know a lawyer in Detroit that purchased those 5 chapters. He bought them from Alex Hazley, and he tried to publish them. First of all, he went to Random House to try to get it added to that. They wouldn't take him. Malcolm had a business plan that was an amazing business plan that he wanted to print in that because it deserves to be put out, distributed. So they wouldn't do it. So he told me he was going to do 1 chapter at a time. So he got involved with Malcolm's daughters, and they wouldn't support him because he was a lawyer, the kind that some of y'all know about. Some of you, I can't say openly what he was. They didn't trust him, put it like that. So they wouldn't agree to give support to him for that project, and it never flourished. So he sold it. I was told recently he sold them 5 chapters. I don't know who has it now, but it's available by the owner. He hasn't put it out. So that's the story that was left out of the autobiography. Are there any questions I can give you an answer to that I have? No questions? So I did the best I could, I think. I apologize for straying because I was under the heat in here. Y'all see me? Yes, ma'am.
You said the book was written by
Alex Hazley. Yes, ma'am. Haley. Alex Hazley. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am, Sister Ballard.
And when you hear autobiography, you usually think it's the person who read on him. He had help through Alex Haley, who was a famous author at the time, because he had wrote Roots.
That's right.
He did Roots. Yeah.
But Roots came after Malcolm.
After Malcolm, because actually he was famous, which is
Playboy.
funny, because he used to write in
Playboy.
in a magazine that was, that's not, it's known, but it was a magazine that had nigger folks in it. That's all. But that was, at that time, it was distributed out there, and that's how Alex Haley became well known.
That's correct.
And I think did he do something with Muhammad Ali?
I don't know. I do know he was famous for that.
Abdul Latif.
So he did write Roots? The one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I find it interesting too, and I believe it because I read Roots like so long ago, but I remember Roots had so much Islamic content in it about making the salats and prayers, and like a lot of people don't see until you actually really read the book.
Did he?
That's the Kunta piece in there that he
Kunta
actually
Kinte.
Muhammad Ali too?
Yeah.
and was
Alex Haley.
converted.
He did? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Sister Ballard.
Do I need the mic? I don't think I need the mic. First of all, I want to say that.
for YouTube.
Okay, yeah, because you can't hear. Assalamualaikum. First of all, I want to say, Zarif Osman, that's my husband, y'all. You did a phenomenal job. A phenomenal job. And, and I'm always amazed at how you can spit this out memory. I get lessons. I'm on 10,565 lessons at home. I just want y'all to know that. And we still count. And I cherish all my lessons I get. Y'all didn't catch that, but I get lessons all the time. But anyway, I love it because it's history. I've learned so much history. But the thing about this is so phenomenal. I had a chance to go see an opera, and my sister over here, she didn't like the opera too much. But that's all right. That's all right. I love opera. But they did such a phenomenal job recanting the story of Malcolm. It was moving to me, that opera that was done, and I forgot exactly who did it. It was one of his daughters was in, I may have that wrong, you all, but conjunction with the people in New York that did this, it was phenomenal. But just to think of the history, my question is, and I know the answer, but I just want to ask it again. Why do you think so many people had such hate for him? Because he really, in my opinion, told the real story of how Islam should be. And so, could you respond to that, Brother Osman, please?
And the reason is, in America, racism is so pervasive, and it's actually racism is older than America. And when you think about it, the Constitution in America did not come into being until 1776, and slavery was already ongoing. So later, America had been taught to have a separation, that people of color, black people in particular, could never be classified, considered to be fully human, and have access to those civilized other people. That was taught. It didn't mean that it was true, but it was taught. And, even the legacy that slavery brought, they never said that the people who came were not slaves. They were people of aristocracy, kings, queens, princes that were enslaved after they came. So they actually came after the best people. So think for a minute, when the U.S. Capitol was built, the 1880s, black slaves built that building. So they had a knowledge of masonry of an order that others in America did not have. But yet they want us to accept the belief that those slaves built that building and they couldn't read, they couldn't count, they didn't know the language, they were, bamboo people from out in Africa with a spear and a shield. That's not true. So all of the buildings and construction that took place because of what we knew, who we are, and what we knew how to do when we came in, they selected people from parts of Africa who had those skills. That's the first thing. So when you think of, here's Malcolm for the first time speaking a language that Elijah Muhammad had given him, and that's the first time that a black person had ever confronted white America directly. Their language was, the white man is the devil. The language is the white man, all of them are devils, and that the black man is God. This is unbelievable to most white people. And to reinforce that with men whom Elijah had raised from the gutters of America, cleaned them up, dressed them up, given them a sense of who they are and a history that nobody else had ever given us, and cleaned the women up, the children. We're protecting. Slavery made you have to give up your wife, your child. Here, Elijah saying, we're not standing for that, right? We don't have any weapons on us, but don't touch our women and don't touch our children. If you do, we're going to take our steps to whatever's necessary. If we need to take a life, we'll take a life. Why? Because we have dignity, and this is the thing that Malcolm was able to teach across the board. And those who sympathized never joined. But if Malcolm would get on the soapbox in New York City and 500 people would gather in 15 or 20 minutes, because that message was so profound. If you ask every black man that came in the Nation of Islam, 99% heard the message one time and said, I'm going to join. I'm going to join. And this is the power of that word, of that message. And that's what you're seeing why the white power structure said, we got to stop that. Now, no weapons, no guns. 1966, the Black Panther Party started, June of 1966, with guns in hand, because Dr. Hewitt P. Newton had searched the record and searched the legislature to know, well, you could openly carry your weapon in California, it's legal. Anybody, everybody can do it. So that's why they were bearing their weapons. That was never seen before. The nation didn't have weapons. But they knew that the mind of the nation, the FOI, they only attacked 3 masjids in that time. They attacked St. Louis, they attacked New York City, and they attacked 27 in Los Angeles. And we had a death in 2 of those cases. But what you realize is they didn't dare do that. Now, they attacked the Black Panther Party, Huey P. Newton. We know that story, right? They shot 83 rounds in that room to kill that man. While he slept under the cover, they never woke him up. Fred Hampton. That's right. In Chicago.
Yes.
21 years old, because he was executing the Black Panther Party program. Free health care came about because of the Panther Party. The practice of having young kids have early education opportunities, that's called Head Start, was started by the Black Panther Party. Feeding our own people, Black Panther Party. So when you see America eventually adopted all of that into law, but they fought and killed us because it was our idea. That's the reason hatred cannot be fathomed toward us in America. And you would ask that question even today. Why is there still hatred toward us in America to this day? We've never been a threat to America. There's never a choice where we have black men going after killing white people in rage. The Klan has that history, but black people don't have that history. No African nation has ever invaded a white nation and taken them prisoner, taken them captive. Of the 54 African nations, none of them have done that. But 14 European nations did that, the same thing to Africa. So these are the facts that really bear out why we have a history that is to be preserved and is to be understood and known. And it's important that we teach our children, grands, and great-grands these facts, because it is always known. If you don't know your history, then you are going to be manipulated by somebody else's. So you have to learn your history, even if you don't like history, because you have to know where you came from. And those things that Elijah Muhammad was teaching, you don't know your last name because you are the product of the slaveholder. So the X was instituted. By 1975, 4 and 75, it actually started in 1974. They stopped giving X's and gave W's, because the W was the symbol that you are waiting on your religious name, or your what we then called it, your righteous name, right? Because many of us who came in and got an X, because we didn't know our last name, and wherever you went in any city, anybody that had the same name as yours, you became a number of that X. You know, I was George X when I started in Virginia. When I went to Kansas City, I was George 4X, because there was 3 other Georges there before me. So you might find John 36X in Chicago, William 34X in Detroit, because they go back to the history of the first brother that had that name when they came in the community. And you got the next number on your X. And in 74, you were a W, you were waiting on a name.
I would be remiss, I got to say this, thank you for that. I would be remiss if I don't acknowledge the brothers in this masjid. And I want to say, just to follow up on what Brother Maurice said about the brothers here. The brothers, you all treat us like queens, you know. I mean, we are treated royally in this masjid, and it shows the young people, the young sisters, this is what you're supposed to look for, and it teaches the young brothers, this is how you're supposed to treat a lady. And I want to acknowledge each and every one of you, and people out there in online, you know, if you've never been to Masjid Ash-Shaheed, I want to invite you to come so you can witness it. If you're not seeing this kind of treatment, come here, so you can see how we're escorted out the building. How the brothers, we don't go out in the dark by ourselves. They take us to our car. They help us with our bags. They open our doors. I'm not opening no door, because I know the brother's going to open the door for me. And that's how ladies supposed to be treated. So I want to commend each and every brother in this masjid. If you got sons out there and you don't know and they don't have a mentor, bring them here so they can get mentored in Masjid Ash-Shaheed. Because we got men, real men in this masjid who look out for us and take care of us. And I want to say thank you to each one of you for all that you all do and all the work that you put in. Thank you so much, Shakran, for that. I just wanted to make that. Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead. You want to give it to sister? Okay, here you go, sister.
Assalamu alaikum. So I actually have a question. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is influential to both men and women and has been historically for quite some time. My question is, why do you think in the autobiography, you got me? Okay, thank you. Why do you think in the autobiography they left out the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X autobiography? Because a lot of times we find that people, for the most part, will acknowledge the students of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but then leave out the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So why is that a problem within our communities?
Well, I will say that even in the, is that on? Yeah, here it is. In the movie, if you saw the movie, they did not leave that out. They gave the connection that he got the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to go forward, even in prison, right? And if you recall, in the history, and I'm going back to the 60s, in the 60s, I was a teenager, and I never saw Elijah Muhammad on the TV. I only saw his student Elijah. I mean, the student of Elijah, which was Malcolm, right? So remember, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was so bold. No black man had ever been able to say what he said forthrightly, publicly, in all of his public meetings. He said the same thing. His book, Message to the Black Man, was in print, that the white man is the devil. Now you just got to think, the psychology of that statement alone caused fear in the minds of white people. They didn't know what to do with that. He also said, we don't carry any weapons whatsoever. We don't even carry a penknife. He's telling you, this is man to man. No man is going to say that doesn't have the power to defend that. And Elijah Muhammad was only like 5'6". He wasn't a big man. He wasn't a strong man. But why would a man have the command of all of these men called FOI around him that's willing to fight, kill, and die if they must, to protect him, and he would make public statements filling arenas? It's never going to be the enemy's going to give you credit. The enemy of Elijah Muhammad was white America, was American racism, was American exceptionalism, was American white privilege. That was the enemy he spoke to. And no black man had ever done that. If you go and look at everybody else in civil rights, they speak around that. They never spoke to that. Martin Luther King never spoke to that. Nobody else spoke to that. So you have a method of speaking. The Klan was always very active. Why didn't the Klan come after Elijah Muhammad? He started in 1930 up to 1975. For 45 years, the Klan never came after him. They knew where he was, in Chicago. He never hid who he was, where he was. He had land in Georgia, Pell City, Alabama, land in Cassopolis, Michigan. All of these public addresses, every February he convened the convention. So your question is, I wonder why they never gave Elijah Muhammad credit for Malcolm's work, but it was well known who his teacher is. And Malcolm made that plain every time he spoke. His language was, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that. He never was ever able to appear without giving credit to his teacher. They knew that, but for them to give credit to his teacher would be a betrayal in their brain, because their job was to get black people to not listen to that. and certainly not believe it, even if they heard it. But the reverse was true. The migration to the Nation of Islam was in a 3-year period, from 72 to 75 was the largest increase in the number. At 1972, there were somewhere in the neighborhood of about 31 temples that had a number. By 1975, there was 82 that had a number. That number of, if you go back 30 to 40 years, it took them that long to get 30 or 35 temples established around the country. And in that last 3 years, when many of us who are here today came through, that's when the temples grew in number around the country and overseas, because the islands opened up. Bermuda, in other, Jamaica, other places around the world started opening up Muhammad's temples of Islam. And he, from one time, from Muhammad's mosque to Muhammad's temple. But you know, that would be the reason why the enemy never wanted to give sanction to the fact that Malcolm's teacher doesn't have to speak. That's his student. And then comes 63, Elijah Muhammad's other student is Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali now is another student, and you can't contend with him. He's taken over the sports arena. He's taken over sports around the world. He's now becoming his sin, same thing. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'm not going to the draft. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches. So this is one of those reasons why they didn't want to contend with that man. As they used to call him, the boldest black man in America was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
I want to speak on what Malcolm said was when he was released from prison, he had already established a relationship with Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They were writing consistently. Maybe once a week he got a letter, and he wrote him back. So when he was released, he went to visit him in Chicago, and he started receiving personal mentorship. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked him personally, would he assist him in his ministry? Malcolm didn't feel like he was worthy to be a minister. He told his brothers that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked me to help him and the nation as a minister. And he needs assistance. Would y'all consider doing that? His two brothers, Wilford and Filbert. And Malcolm exemplified it first by taking the steps. In 3 months, he filled up Temple Number 1. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was so impressed with his work, he sent Malcolm to Springfield to do the same thing. From Springfield to Boston, from Boston to Philadelphia. So he tells you all that in the book. All those temples, he built those temples to be successful. And when he went to Harlem, he built, I think, 12 satellites from one. Maurice, is it 12? 12 satellites from number 7. So 7 has 7A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all through New York and New Jersey. Malcolm did that. And all those ministers came from being students of his, supporting the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So all those temples, Malcolm helped to create that, supporting the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He mentions that in the book. Maybe they didn't glorify it enough. Like he said, they don't want you to see how significant that little third-grade educated man was. But it's a powerful historical connection. And I want to get to, one second, I want to get to Minister Malcolm was a disciple of his mother and father that were disciples of Marcus Garvey. His father was a preacher, and in the book, Malcolm say, out of all my father's children, he picked me to go with him when he go out public to give lectures. Malcolm was the lightest one in the family, and he felt that his father was trying to put that blackness in him because he was so light. He said, I don't know why my daddy picked me, but I always went and I was inspired by the lecture my father taught about blackness. So it was instilled in him. His mother was a writer for the Marcus Garvey magazine newspaper, so he had that in him as well, mother and father. You know, they killed his father. They killed all his father's brothers for being militant and being outspoken, but that's a fact. Yes, sir.
Hold on 1 second.
His father was an activist, and he was instrumental, you know, he was instrumental in Malcolm's rise. You know, that was even before Elijah, Malcolm's father. And this is why they eliminated him how they did. You know, we were just talking about terrorism. I say they were the first terrorists. The Ku Klux Klan was the first terrorist group. Anytime they say something or deal with Muslims, it's like terrorism and Islam go together like ham and eggs. You follow me? You know? And I said, no, y'all was the first terrorists. And I was dialoguing with a gentleman in downtown, and we were talking. And I said, you know, your folks, brother, I said, you committed genocide on the Indians. You dropped an atom bomb on the yellow man, and you enslaved the black man. You got to pay for that. You robbed God of a whole race of people. A whole race of people. You know, so now you see an awakening even in Africa now. Africa, being the drumbeat of the world, is waking up. Thank God for Ibrahim Touré. I don't want to go too far off Malcolm, because this is good for folks that don't know Malcolm. There are a lot of folks, they talk about Malcolm, but they didn't go near Malcolm because of the boldness, because his boldest speech. That's, like you were saying earlier in the conversation about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Why do folks hate him, or why do they leave him out? See, all we had in the scripture talks about that. In the beginning was what? The word. We didn't even have a penknife. We had a word. 5'4", to be exact.
5'4".
5'4".
That's right.
But we had an army. That was their fear. You couldn't come close to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Because you had people that said, my life and my death are all for Allah. See, when you got that mentality, you know that's a heck of a force. And you see it to this day. They hate Minister Farrakhan because he still holds up that banner, and he won't let you erase the Honorable Elijah Muhammad out of history.
That's right. That's right.
And I thank Allah for his supreme sacrifice that he have made. That was a sacrifice. Those of us that was in the ranks, our families came against us. My father said, what the hell you change your name for? Use the hall. You know, I went through a whole lot, being ostracized, simply because I want to help my people. I look at it back at back in my time, like you said, the Black Panther Party, they fed me breakfast.
Right.
Those were Malcolm's children.
Right.
The Black Panther Party was Malcolm's children.
That's right.
That was his children. But the Black Panther Party, they picked up the gun. So the enemy was justified. You see? They rolled on them. You see how they killed Hampton. Those were young brothers.
Yeah.
Malcolm, Martin Luther King, they were 36. They was young brothers. They were young brothers. And listen to Martin Luther King. I mean, this guy graduated from their institution of learning at 17. Huey Newton was untouchable. H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, those was warriors. Those were warriors. So to stand up in the midst of this bold enemy, you see how he do. To this day, this guy done resurrected that spirit. This orange man done resurrected that spirit. Look at the spirit that he got. You going in countries and taking it. Taking the president and stuff like that. I had to say that. Yeah. You know, I had to say that because like you said earlier, our kids got to know this. Yeah. Yeah. I've been in this classroom 54 years, God's classroom. Right. Under the guidance and the tutelage of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Yeah. Imam Muhammad. The Muhammad family. When I was in Mecca, they said, who's your sheikh? I said, my sheikhs is in America. Yeah. The Muhammad family is my sheikhs. Yeah. That's my sheikhs, and I'm not ashamed to say it, you see, because I'm a Muhammad-made man. That's right. Ain't nothing like us. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Also, on the front line during that time was our dear brother right here. He never talked about it. He's so humble with it. But I'm going to have him share his experience and his duty to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
That's right.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Thank you. I'm starting with Malcolm. I never met Malcolm. I do remember when he was killed, though, 65. That's the same year Muhammad Ali beat Floyd Patterson. And, but getting back to Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I went to Chicago from Springfield, Massachusetts. I heard somebody else mention Springfield earlier, that Malcolm went there. And from Springfield to Chicago in '71. And it was a very rewarding experience for me. In less than 6 months, I had keys to the masjid. We call it temple then. And 2948, that number may not mean anything to you all, but 2948, South Federal was the Muhammad Speaks newspaper plant. And I got a job there in '71. I was there maybe 2 months. I got a job there. And didn't know Malcolm, but I know I loaded a lot of his Muhammad Speak newspapers. In fact, we loaded 3 or 4 trucks come in, 50-foot trucks, 53-foot, I mean, from east to the west and north to the south. We packed them. So maybe if you read some of those papers between '71 and '76, I probably packed that paper. I knew brothers in prison. I would write them little notes, Assalamu alaikum, on their papers. We sent them papers out. So all over the world. And I do have some documents to show how many papers every masjid was selling, every temple was selling. New York, ABC, all them, all them temples. Chicago, Philadelphia, New Jersey, all the top masjids. I was keep saying masjids. But it was amazing. It was amazing. And I was really blessed too, because I was blessed to be on the escort detail with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which means I was responsible for his security. Only one in his limousine with him was Supreme Captain Sharif driving, and I was in shotgun seat, as they say. Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the back. And his last sermon was on the theology of time. He came out 21 times, and I was blessed to be in the car with him, in the limousine. We had 3 Cadillacs in front of him and 3 Cadillacs behind him. And we rode through the neighborhood. We had alternative routes. Some went down where we couldn't get through. We had a walkie-talkie. Okay, bro, take this, take that. We rode on in. And we sat there inside with him. Time to go. We lined up the cars pulling up. We was gone. But people respected us. Excuse me. They respected the Muslims all over. We didn't allow them to disrespect our women. That was a big no-no. You don't do that. Brothers will come after you. We don't do that. You don't disrespect our women. We keep that still today. And we thank Sister Victoria for giving us that thumbs up. And we invite you to come to Masjid Ash-Shaheed. We got a lot of good brothers here from New York, New Jersey, and they're keeping the same spirit that Malcolm and Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave us. And we thank him. We thank him for Muhammad Ali. I was blessed to be with Ali one time, many times actually. And after he got sick one day, we was up in Michigan at his house. And when Ali talked to you, he like what they said Rasulullah do. He put his whole face towards you. And he looked at me. He said, "Do you think Malcolm's in paradise?" Just out the blue sky, he asked that. I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "He was on the Sunnah." I said, "Of course I do." Because he was always concerned about Malcolm. He was hurt when him and Malcolm had separated, when he, went with Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm went his separate way. That hurt Ali. He's always concerned about Malcolm. So now may Allah bless them. They're all together now. So thank you.
See, the history that we have here at Masjid Ash-Shaheed, we don't talk about it a lot, but you got brothers here that's been on security, as he just beautifully noted. Some of us been on security with Imam Debbie D. Muhammad, and it's amazing to see the dedication and the commitment from our Muslim men. And, so this is what I was saying earlier. We want to make sure we instill that in our young people because, they don't have that. And they need that. So, inshallah, I know time is up on us right now, so I'll give the mic back to our brother. Oh, hold on. Also, we didn't say nothing about the women that was in security. We had some serious sisters in the Nation of Islam that was on security. And they taught security. They taught some of the brothers. And I mean, I experienced that one time, how serious the women on security, and they still, some sisters on security under Minister Farrakhan. And so, you know, we have to acknowledge the support that Malcolm and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad got from the sisters as well. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. At this time, we thank you for listening to us and supporting us. We want to break for prayer right now and move on with our day. But thank you again. Thank you again. And this yeah, we're going to lead out with prayer. And then you just go ahead.
So we'll close out with dua, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wal amilu salihat wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Ameen.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Good job.
No problem, no problem. We need to turn the.
We're going to leave this up here.
Yeah, we
need another table.
All right.
Actually, know what? We might switch tables. We can bring the long table.
Testing. We're getting ready to call now.